Hi, my name is Casper Lam.
And I'm Eugene Park, and we're Synoptic office. So we want you to imagine that you're at a museum. You round the corner and come across a work of art. What do you see? What story is the work telling? And why might the work matter to you? Yet cultural objects are almost never seen in isolation. They're always seen in the context of other works. And each time that work is exhibited, it gathers new facets of meaning that speak to a specific moment in time. A single cultural work has multiple stories. Or more specifically, a cultural work is comprised of many microstories. And at their heart, cultural institutions are centers of memory, knowledge, and culture. At the foundation of an institution, you have the physical collection, and then radiating out from that, you have several outreach initiatives such as a digital collection, publishing, and education. And all these things work together to create an institution's cultural heritage. But it's become increasingly complicated. There are more demands placed on institutions than ever before. It can often feel like you're racing against the clock to meet the demands of all the communication platforms, and these platforms are only multiplying. There are more voices, there's more content, there's more channels, but on the flip side, we also have lower attention spans, fewer resources, and less time. In addition to all of that, all institutions face curatorial, editorial, educational, legal, and technical challenges.
And this brings us to the work that we've been doing at New Ink. What we've been trying to do is to create a framework for activating these cultural works, which we call microstories. And our idea is very simple. And the idea is to write once and to allow the cultural institution to deploy everywhere, activating their content across multiple channels. When we think about microstories, they're really self-contained units of meaning. So if you were to go to a regular exhibition, you will see that their framing text or the exhibition wall text usually runs around 200 words in the introduction. And they usually talk about the historical significance or the context or even the importance of the exhibition itself. When you get to the cultural work itself, the object labels typically range at around 70 words. And they might talk about the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how, the 5 W's. But in our understanding of microstories, we're really looking at something a little bit smaller, at around 50 words. And what makes it unique is that they're a combination of one of the 5 W's, the who, the what, the when, the where, or the why, or the how, along with the significance or the impact. And that is the key part, because that allows us to connect with the individual in a moment of time. If we take a look at a particular wall label here, and this is from the VNA, this is a perfectly fine wall label. It is very factual. It talks about the who, the what, the when, the where, and of course the why. But in a way, it perhaps is maybe too factual. Instead, our microstories focus on impact and significance. We've been working closely with the San Jose Museum of Art to begin to sort of uncover what these might be. And these include things like, a moment of wonder, a creative connection, or point of view for an artist, maybe their background story or a particular historical connection. And these particular significance and impact allows the audience to actually connect with the work of art or the cultural work in general in a more poignant way and in a more personal way. And so, as I said, we were working with the San Jose Museum of Art, and we'll take a look at one of their particular works to use as an example. This is from Leo Villarreal, and it's one of his installation pieces. And what we found that's really fascinating as we began to look at the writings from the museum, they have this fantastic publication called 50 by 50, which everybody should take a look at. But what we noticed and what we extracted from there were these micro stories, which are very, very, that have a very deep connection to a particular person. So if you take a look at the structure, part of the microstory talks about the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how. And then the other part talks about the impact or the significance. And together they form this cohesive unit of meaning, which allows the microstory to become this item that can connect with audiences. Now, what makes this really particularly interesting is that you begin to imagine all these microstories strung together. they begin to form these larger narratives. And that's the basis of this idea of evergreen content. When we begin to think about this on a holistic level and over time, it actually begins to allow us to create a physical system that can drive audience growth. So again, in this kind of sandbox example that we've been using with the museum, you can begin to see that it allows a museum staff to begin to select different bits of these microstories to string them together into these different narratives. So using the same content, you can actually generate slightly different versions of these narratives, which can then populate multiple channels. You can see here, once we've begun to generate a particular narrative, we can then copy it and then start to distribute it across different types of media. So for instance, to attain educational goals, social media, publishing lessons, things like that. And it really gets to the heart of our idea of what a microstory is, and that is to create these units that can be pushed out to multiple platforms. And again, this idea of writing once and deploying everywhere. Now, when we break down these stories, what it allows an institution to do is to begin to speak towards these ever-evolving social, political, and cultural narratives that we find ourselves in. And that allows us to amplify different voices across different channels in a more efficient and sustainable manner, since, as Yishu mentioned, many institutions are facing resource challenges.
So we see this already happening across mass media, particularly with the microjournalism movement. Many of you here might be familiar with Quartz or Axios, or even you see this happening with Netflix and the New York Times, where content is being activated in new ways to create personal connections between the readers and the content. And this is to ultimately inform and shape culture through storytelling. Our passion as a studio is really thinking about how we can activate cultural objects through storytellings, say, whether it's an archive of Renaissance book covers, to revealing connections through design and data, and then bringing these digital collections to life in new and immersive and interesting ways. So we are currently partnering with institutions such as the San Jose Museum of Art and Opera Philadelphia. And we've had the privilege of working with various cultural, civic, and business organizations in the past. And if you work in education and outreach at your institution and are passionate about activating your cultural objects through storytelling to reach new audiences sustainably, we would love to be your thought partners. Every institution is unique, so we hope you'll join us in our breakout room. Thank you.
Thank you so much.